Hi students, today we're going to have a look at creating a mesh structure that's kind of organic in form, a bit like this one you can see on screen here. So we're going to use a combination of Blender and some plugins to make it happen. So let's get started. So yeah, I'll zoom out on this so you can see. So we're making our organic lamp structures using this technique. The first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be heading, if you haven't got it installed yet, to blender.org, which you can see up here, and you can download Blender, whatever the latest version is, okay? So I think, yeah, 4.0 or 4.1 if you're ahead on the beta. Now, if you go to this site, apart from download, you'll find there are plenty of interesting features that you can check them all out and different projects, and it's a really excellent 3D package. Okay, so let's get things underway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Blender. Let me just get that going. Yep. And I'll just full screen this so you can see what's happening. Okay, we're away. First time Blender opens, you get a little bit of stuff about some different preferences. That's okay. So I'm happy with my left click. I'm happy with English, etc. So that's all good. You can change your theme down in here if you would like to. And I'm just going to click continue. That's all pretty good stuff. So I'm just going to click away on the background. And I can now see my 3D world here. Okay, now if this is the first time you've used Blender, you'll find that it is quite a dense package. It's a full 3D modeling, rendering, animation package. It's, you know, it's got everything. So yeah, it's got a lot of stuff, and you've got to just take it step by step, and don't go exploring too far, but learn about certain, you know, pieces bit by bit. Okay, so I am using a mouse as I'm working in this, and the mouse gives me a middle mouse scroll wheel, which means as I hit the scroll wheel, I can zoom in and out, which is really good. I can also hold down my middle mouse button. It means I can rotate around objects. And if I hold down my shift and my middle mouse button, it allows me to pan across this world. Okay, so there's some of the good things about it. So we're going to be creating a mesh object, and we're not really going to need these objects up here. So this is a light, this is a camera. So I'm just going to hit my X key, and X key is the delete key in Blender. And actually, I don't think we're going to use this cube. So I'm going to go X, delete this, and we're going to create a new object. Now, depending on what you want your lamp to look like, this object is going to, you know, it's going to vary. Some people are going to use heads that they've imported from 3D scanning type. Some people are going to use cylinders, cubes. You know, it's totally up to you. But what I'm going to do is I'll keep it fairly simple for today. So I'm going to come up here to add. I'm going to add a mesh. And what I might do is I might add a cylinder for starters. That's a pretty decent one to get going with. And we'll see here in add cylinder, it gives me some controls here. Amount of vertices, so they're the amount of vertices around the ring of the object. The radius 1 meter, so these squares represent 1 meter at the moment. And the depth, so it's 2 meters tall. I might take that up to say 3 meters. It doesn't really matter, but let's just stretch it out a little bit in the interests of our lamp. That's pretty good. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this object. So it's looking pretty good. I'll create just a cylindrical object with no ends for starters, just to make, you know, so you can understand how the process works. So what I'm going to do for starters is I'm going to do a loop cut. So I can come across here. You'll notice I'm in edit mode up the top here. So make sure that you're in edit mode. Come down and grab this loop cut tool, okay? The loop cut cuts all the way around the object. So I'm going to click once there. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to click there. I'm going to click there, click there, click there, click there. And that's going to start to give me a mesh. If I want it a bit finer, I can click down again. I might do that divide the whole thing up into slightly smaller bits. Good one. Okay, so this will make a fairly tight loop structure. If you want a bigger loop structure, then don't subdivide it as much. Okay, so it's totally up to you. You can have different size bits of mesh. Will give you different holes. It'll all turn out really interesting. So I'm going to here these end caps on this cylinder, so we can see at the moment it's solid like a can. I've selected this face select mode. So before we were in this vertex select mode, we're moving across to face select. Okay, and I can click on the end and I can just go X delete, and I'm going to delete the face, but not the vertices. Okay, so the vertices make up the ring. We don't want to lose the vertices because the sides are joined onto them. We just want to take away the faces. I'm going to go to this one, going to delete this face. Good one. Okay, so that has given me a nice cylinder I can work with. Now, as you are working in 3D, totally worth saving. So let's come down here. Let's do a save as, and I'll save it to somewhere sensible. And so I'll save it to my desktop at the moment, but it's up to you where you want to save it to. And I'm going to change it from untitled because that's the worst name to call anything. And I'll call it cylinder for the moment. Okay, so we're looking good. We'll save that. Got our cylinder. And so the next thing that we need to do is it's quite uniform, and we want to roughen up the surface a little bit. Now, we've got a few different tools that can do that for us. So let's have a look here. So we've got this thing down here. It's called the modifier stack, and it's got like a spanner shape down here. So it's the first of these blue ones. So I'm going to go add modifier. I'm going to click on this plus sign. I'm going to see there are some different ones here. The deform has got some good stuff. We might just have a look here under, there's an interesting decimate one, if I can find it. Here we go, decimate. Okay, so there's this tool called decimate, and decimate, as I turn this down, you'll see that it will start to change the symmetry it'll start to make it look a little bit chunkier. And I don't think we've really got enough vertices for it to be worth doing that. So maybe we won't bother too much with the decimate just yet, but we will come back to it when we get a bit more geometry. Okay, so let's add a modifier. And what we're going to add is, so under the deform, we're going to add a displace modifier. Okay, and you can see here that it's made the shape jump up in size. Now you won't see this if you are still in edit mode. It looks the same, but if we jump out to object mode, it's going to we're going to see it as a bigger shape. So this is really what it's going to look like as we get working. Okay, so part of our displace here is that we want to add a new here. So this is a texture. That's what the checker means. So let's go new. That's good. Okay. So we've got a texture and we've got it set up, but we need to actually define what that texture is. So I'm going to come down to this checkerboard down the bottom here. And at the moment it's set to an image or a movie, but we're going to come down to one of these, which is basically a noise generator. So we can see an image here of this noise, and the noise is kind of like applying it to the surface of our object. So you can see immediately it's starting to jump out and it's getting a little bit more interesting texture going on. So let's go back up to our spanner where we had our displace. So the noise is pushing it out. Where the texture is black, it's pushing it out. Where it's white, it's sitting in. And we can adjust the mid-level of this by adjusting this, okay? So we can see there we've also got a strength, so we can start to adjust, how it looks. So I'm just going to bring it in a bit so it's kind of looking wrinkly, but not too much. So for me, that's pretty good, okay? So I am going to go, that looks all good. Make sure I'm in object mode, which I am, and then I can apply this. So when it comes to applying, there's a little triangle arrow down tab here. I'm just going to click on that and go apply, okay? And now what it means is I'm not using that if I go into edit mode. So I'll go up here, edit mode, and we can see now that the mesh when I go inside actually looks like it did. That's good. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to, we might have a look at that decimate again, because it wasn't really working for us before, and I don't 100% know why, but let's just check it out. I am doing this on the fly a little bit. Let's check it out. Decimate, generate decimate. Decimate should really chop down our symmetry, chop down the amount of geometry, but it's not really. Doesn't seem to be really applying it at the moment. I don't know why. Okay, we'll chop this out of the video and come back to that later on. Okay, so we're looking at our mesh at the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to install a plugin. So these windows are all reconfigurable. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to have a look for my preferences. Okay, and what we're going to do is once this preference window opens, I'm going to come down to add-ons, and we're going to install an add-on called Tissue. So I'll just type in Tissue here. This gives me the add-on. I can see it listed here, Mesh, Tissue, that's good. And I'm just going to turn it on. Okay, it's now turned on. If you want to know any more information about this, we can see that you can get to documentation, you can report a bug, and there's just a bit of stuff about when it was released, etc. Mine, I've got in preferences error, see console, doesn't seem to affect it. Okay, so don't know what that's about, to be honest. We'll just let it roll for the moment. So we want to go back to a 3D viewport now. So let's go 3D viewport, and we can see our object back again. And then we can start to create our object. Now, to get access to Tissue, there's a little arrow just up in here. I click on that, or I can hit my N button, and N will bring up these keys here, and there's this one for Tissue. Right. Okay, so I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to go dual mesh. And I'm just going to go OK to that. Okay, and it's now created two meshes, our original mesh and this new sort of more interesting one. So let's have a look here. I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to move these apart so I can see. Okay, so now I've got these kind of like interesting meshes, and it looks like our decimate had been working that I was messing around with before, but it just hadn't been displaying on the screen. I don't know why. Okay, so here is our Tissue object, which has been broken up into these interesting faces. So what I'm going to do is this one over here. We could keep it, but I'm not going to within this video. So I'm just going to go X, delete, good one. And then I'm going to select this one. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a modifier. So add modifier, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a wireframe modifier. Okay, and we can see now it's broken up this wireframe into, this mesh into a wireframe. So wherever faces were meeting, it's creating these sort of organic shapes, And as we move around it, I'm holding down my middle mouse button to roll around here. We can see that it's sort of all bubbly on the surface as well, which is what we're after. We can tune up the thickness of this now. So you can custom set the thickness however you like it. And this will give you, if we have a good look at it, it'll give you these kind of like pointy kind of like mesh, you know. So it's not so rounded. It's looking a little bit kind of man-made. Yeah, it's really interesting. I like it. But if you wanted to get more of a rounded organic feel, because this is called a modifier stack, what it means is that we can have multiple modifiers running down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to add one that you use quite a lot in Blender called the subdivision surface. So I'm going to click on subdivision surface, and we can see here what it does is what was kind of like all pointy and jaggy. Now we're starting to get some smoothness, okay? Now, there's also another thing on here. So we can go, you can see here there's levels in the viewport. So we can turn this up. I would be tempted to not really go past 2, okay? If we go to 3, it'll start to smooth it out, but it will actually start to get a little bit difficult for the printer to deal with it. So 2 is probably pretty good for this project to get your physical job out and printing, okay? Now, this object is also looking quite nice and flat on the bottom, so that's a good thing. That'll make it a bit easier to work with. So now that is all happening nicely and we're happy with the way things are looking, what we might do is start to apply these modifiers. So at the moment, these modifiers, they're all adjustable. So I can still adjust the thickness of this, and I can fine tune how it looks to get me the kind of feel that I want from my lamp. The thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to print, the less light's going to come through from the inside. Okay, so just have a think about that. The thinner it is also, the more like translucent the material will be. Okay, so I'm going to settle on something like that. That is looking good. Now, every time you go through this process, you end up with a different kind of randomized mesh that you can work with. Okay, so if we're happy with that, first thing we do is we go apply. So we apply the top one in the stack, and then we go apply the second one in the stack. And now what we've got is we've got ourselves a lamp that's ready just about for printing. So in order, I'll hit save just while we're going here. So hit save. It's always, do that in 3D. Now, this object, when we bring it into the 3D printer, it's actually going to be pretty like minuscule. We can change the scaling a little bit, but I'll often just hit S scale just as a really like super easy way, and I'll drag out my mouse and I'll scale it up quite a bit, and that'll make it just a bit easier when we deal with our final, object that we're ready to take into the printer, into the Bamboo Lab software. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go File, Export, and we need to export an STL. And so I'm going to run down here. So here's our file, STL. Great. All right. Scale 1, scene unit. I think you can change scene unit. I thought we could change that to millimeters. Maybe not. We'll just leave it as it is. I've enlarged it. It'll come in looking pretty decent. I'm going to save to the desktop. I've given it a name. I'm going to now go export STL. That is good. So I'm exporting to desktop. I like it. Okay. And that's going to export. It shouldn't take too long. Pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to launch the Bamboo Lab software. So let me come along here. You can close Blender now if you want to. It does use a bit of resources to get it going. Oops, let me just bring up Bamboo software. Looks like I'm using multi-screens, so it's a bit all over the place. Bamboo Studio. So it's going to launch down here in the wrong window that you can't see, but I'll drag it up once it starts. So it is just starting up at the moment. It's some kind of web-based app of some description, so it can be a bit slow to start up. No, okay, so it's just asking for, unsaved projects. Okay, so here's my Bamboo software. So I'm just going to go prepare, good one, and I'm going to load up that STL. So I'm just going to look for it, and it's on my desktop. So I'll just click on my desktop, cylinder STL. That is nice, and I'm just going to go open. Okay, and it's brought it in, and you can see even though I made it really big in Blender, oops, let's get rid of these error dialogues, that I'll make it a bit bigger, is that we can see it came in really small. If I hadn't enlarged it, it would have been like minuscule. That's just one of those things. You can sort that problem out, but we don't need to too much in this case. So I've just come along here to scale, and I'm going to just grab one of these things, and I'm just going to scale it up. Okay, so it'll scale it up proportionally, and let go, and you can see it's changed it all up there. Okay, so I now have got my my lamp in there. It's looking good. Okay, now one of the things with this is we want to have a fairly flat base on your lamp so that it's going to print nicely. And the other good thing about this mesh is we can print it without needing supports because it's got these nice sort of smooth loops inside it. So that's actually a really huge bonus. So as long as we know that the base of this is nice and smooth, then we're going to be able to basically send it to the printer. Now, there's a few tricks that we just got to totally check here. And the most important one is we've got to make sure that we've got Bamboo Lab X1 carbon 0.4 nozzle. That's our machine. With Bamboo, I don't know why, but if you have the wrong machine selected, it just goes bonkers and knocks the head off the machine. And you've got to do like a recalibration, turn it off and turn it back on again and muck about with it. It takes a bit of time and it's a real pain. I wish Bamboo would fix that, but it's a good machine. Aside from that, and we're also running on all our machines, we're running the textured PEI plate. So they come configured with like the cool plate, but we're running textured PEI. They're the kind of gold looking plates with a slightly kind of rough surface on them. They're really easy to remove your models from, and we don't have to put like glue sticks on them and stuff like that, which is a bit of a mess. Layer height all down here, we don't have to touch it. Support, we keep that off. We don't need to have it on. If we turned it on, I can show you what this design looks like with support, a big mess. So yeah, one of the advantages is we don't need that. Okay, so we're good. We can do a preview. Yep, okay. And then we're about ready to go. The next step is basically just to slice it. And I'll show you how to do that in class because it takes a little bit of time to slice it and deal with the file. I've sliced it anyway, so there we go. And it has created our file. Seems object has floating cantilever. That's pretty okay. It may need a slightly flatter surface than we've been dealing with. So yeah, if we think that's going to be a problem, let me know, and I can show you how to change it around in Blender just to get that bit. I might make a separate video on that actually, just to get that perfect. Okay, so that is, for the moment, that's where we're at. So next step is save it onto an SD card and then pop it on the printer, make sure we've got filament, and you're ready to go. Okay, so I think it's going to be a really fun project. We'll have a look at what type of lighting options we've got to stick inside it. Mr. Summers was thinking that maybe like a flickering candle type LED would be really good, which I think it would be. So I'll get some of those as samples and check them out and see if they pass the test. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in class.